The initial idea came when I was sort of still finishing up film school at NFTS, so that was about 5 years ago. I was researching a lot about people who hear voices for sort of various different reasons and sort of psychological conditions, and was interested in the idea of a voice in someone's head being another character in the film.
Sometimes he talks.
You hear his voice.
Initially, there was this whole sort of like weird love story between Maud and God, and it was a voice you heard in her head. And then it sort of developed from there, because quite quickly I started thinking about sort of, well, who is this girl who's kind of falling in love with this voice in her head? What else is going on in her life? So then we started looking more at the relationship between her and Amanda, the patient she's taking care of. Mental health and religion and loneliness and sort of social alienation. Probably a lot of different themes we're exploring, and I'm sort of interested in like the sort of little private realities that people live in, and sort of the disparity between how different that is to what we present to the world.
Beautiful.
We certainly were very inspired by what were called psychological horrors. Things like Rosemary's Baby, Persona, and the early Polanski stuff has always been quite prime in this specific story, and I think Bergman, as an influence, features very highly in Rose's work as well.
From the moment that Maud gets into the house at the very beginning, that there's something a little bit off about where she is, and to be a little bit unsettling. So it's these little kind of drops. We looked at films like Repulsion, which do that really well. So you just get these little odds with the camera angles, or something about the design which just says, oh, there's something, keep watching, something a little bit weird's going to go on.
As the story ramps up, it gets more and more into this sort of deranged fairy tale.
The house itself is a huge Edwardian place that we shot interiors in London and exteriors up in Scarborough. We've definitely got a bit of a kind of 20s, 30s palette going on, which is Amanda's taste that we've created for her.
The costume, it really is some spectrum of like extremely rigid and conservative with this nurse's outfit to this other character, which is Amanda, who's completely loose and fabulous, and it's just that spectrum is wonderful. So, her day outfits in her home were all luxurious and comfortable, using lots of cashmere and slips and silks, and then when she has people around, she becomes a more heightened version of herself. The robes tend to have this worldly feel because she's had all these friends in her life. She's eccentric, so she's drawn inspiration from all these different places she's travelled throughout her career.
Hey. What do you think?
It's good.
Did definitely give a nod to William Blake and Freud. For Amanda, particularly Freud, because of his skin tones are so suited to that colourless light and shade palette. I thought was really beautiful. And then William Blake is referenced quite a lot in the movie, and Morpeth is definitely more of warmer William Blakean types, and her hair is definitely more like the flames of William Blake. And then there's also, I've looked at a lot of references of religious depiction of Mary, and some of them are quite extreme. Like some of the statues are quite heavily made up women. And so I've drawn a little bit on that.
We've got a production designer, Paulina Wrzejowska. She has created, with very limited resources, these amazing sets, finding efficient ways of creating these quite luxurious environments, and she did a fantastic job with it.
My little savior.
We've had first-time DOP, Ben Fordsman, tremendously talented, and he's created something that is incredibly beautiful.
When we were in development, I'd always said how the look of it was going to be very important, and the whole thing sort of hinges on being able to put the audience very much kind of in Maud's head.
I'm fine.
Action.
For a UK debut film, we had a pretty healthy budget to play with, which is obviously very exciting, backed by Film 4 and the BFI.
We've got a huge amount of practical effects. All of these things add up to quite a real world, and hopefully people will not see these things coming.
It's a whirlpool into the pint glass, and I just applied an engine bottom of the pint glass, and I used a transparent propeller.
I think people will connect with it because there's so much empathy and acute observation of the world as it is.
Rose is someone who operates in quite a visual, cinematic way, so I think having a sense of scale that she could then operate in has shown her talents to the max.